People don't go into fighting that had great lives. And people don't do well at fighting that had great lives. So now I'm looking at this athlete. I don't imagine she was Miss Popular at school. I don't imagine a lot of nice things happened to her. But I do know the sacrifice that it would take to make an Olympic team, let alone to make the Olympic finals. You have no money. You have no job. This doesn't pay. But there is one payoff, which should you succeed, and only 3 of them will, gold, silver, and bronze, somebody somewhere will pat you on the back and tell you good job. She's an amateur athlete. She's gonna go fight 4 people this week and get nothing for it. None of you would have even known she was fighting. So now imagine you reach your goal, you sacrificed, you ate the SpaghettiOs, you lived 3 deep down in mom's basement, you did all of these things, and you brought honor to your country. And not only did somebody not tell you good job, which is the only thing you ever hope to get, they now do the opposite. And they tell you you're a man. You think life for her gets better? This is such a terrible thing for her to have said about her. And it's not true. There is no test.
Oh boy. It might feel like a gender controversy at the Olympics is a very 2024 kind of issue, but we've always been obsessed with other people's gender. Like, ever since the 30s, we were like pointing fingers at other countries saying, your women aren't like our women. Our women are normal. Your women are actually men dressed up as women. And as soon as that thought like permeated the globe, like we haven't been able to let it go. And now that people are trans-identifying, it feels like all of it has like reached a boiling point. So the transgender women and even the cisgendered women, they're all getting shat on. It takes no prisoners. We got Alona Mar.
I always get these comments, but like recently it kind of ramped up. I get comments being called a man and being called masculine and asking if I'm on steroids.
You got Katie Ledecky also being called a man. You can rest assured that if you're a woman who's talented in sports, you're going to be called a man. You also have 2 Zambian football players who are targeted specifically by Australian news outlets.
There's 2 athletes in the Zambian football team who played against the Matildas the other day.
2 of them are on the Zambian football team, and our Matildas went to play with them. You have to ask yourself, were you not a biological male, would you have scored twice against our girls?
What's even worse?
All girls are girls. All girls are girls. All girls have long hair. All girls have XX chromosomes. The Matildas. We should rename the Matildas the XXs so they know that we're girls. And lastly, you have Lin Yuting of Taipei and Imane Khelif of Algeria, the 2 women boxers who are competing at this year's Olympics. As a professional boxer and boxing promoter and radical trans activist, I felt like this story was tailor-made for me. One of the first things that I discovered was that there were more people talking about Imane Khelif than the Olympic Dutch rapist. The celebrities that decided to speak up on this controversy, they did not send their best. Stinky McFart-ass, the fattest baby in the room, every member of the Paul household. I wrote down here, the family that seems like they might use the word bloodline one too many times in casual conversation. Piers Morgan, Dilbert, Doug Dimmadome, Tutter Mouse from Bear in the Big Blue House. I was listening to him on a podcast with the Purple Otters, and they were saying all sorts of like awful transphobic shit. Yeah, so the wait's been long enough. Let's hear from these people.
They let a transgender, there's apparently at least two transgender boxers that are fighting in women's boxing. What the fuck?
I don't understand.
You can't understand because you're not retarded.
Look at this. This is a man. This is a man.
That's a dude. And if it is a woman, a very ugly woman.
Khelif like slaps Karini in the chest, almost looks like Karini gets groped.
And you've got this disgusting piece of shit that tries to come over and, hey, it's okay, it's okay. Angela Karini wants nothing to do with this guy.
They have no breasts. They are built like men. They are 5'10".
The far left wants to allow biological males to beat the living crap out of women in boxing.
She got hit so hard she didn't know what the hell hit her. It's a person that transitioned. He was a good male boxer.
Congratulations to the male Bravo on slugging that woman in a boxing match. Wow, you really proved how great you are at fighting by punching a woman in the face.
Is it not obvious that these people are just fucked up? They're really fucked up in the head. Like, I feel very fortunate to have not continued going down that path. I do have to cut them some slack because it is difficult to find accurate news when the only way you find your news is by looking at Riley Gaines' Instagram.
They let a transgender, there's apparently at least two transgender boxers. Distinctions.
This article says they're not transgender.
What are you talking about?
That's what this says.
They may be intersex. Riley Gaines posted it on her Instagram, failing gender eligibility tests. Okay, that means they're transgender, Jamie.
Getting your trans news from Riley Gaines is a very bad choice. This is like reading the Jerusalem Post to learn about atrocities in Palestine. Imane Khelif and Lin Yuting are not trans, and it's only an allegation that they're intersex. So when I talk about trans people in this video, it's meant to highlight the fact that the same tactics that are being used to dehumanize trans women are being used to dehumanize all women.
They have no breasts. They are built like men. They are 5'10".
If you don't fit into this very small box of what society has deemed a woman to be, you're going to be accused of being a man. Now, I know some of you haven't heard the full story of Imane Khelif at the Olympics, so I'll give you a brief overview, because if you listen to anyone from a month ago, they were talking about it like it's the season finale of Game of Thrones.
At 12:20, she went into the ring. By 12:22, we had an international disaster.
Imane's first opponent in this competition was Italian boxer Angela Carini. Now, Angela Carini is a good boxer. She's been boxing for many years and is obviously good enough to represent Italy. So the fight starts, and in the first 30 seconds, things are looking pretty basic, but you could tell that Angela Carini is outmatched. So after those 30 seconds, she goes to her corner because she has something wrong with her headgear. She needs to get her headgear readjusted. So after she gets her headgear fixed, she comes in, and not like 5 seconds later, she gets a cross to the face. Trump has been calling this a jab.
Well, she got hit with 2 jabs. A jab is not supposed to be that bad. 2 jabs, and she said, no more, I don't want, because she got hit so hard. She said, I've never been hit like that before.
By the way, I do think it's important to point out these small things, because I don't think it's small. It's a very malicious tactic that a lot of these fuckers use to downplay the skill and ability of someone like Imane and say that she's got man strength. And all it took was a jab.
A jab is not supposed to be that bad.
Just a little jab. It wasn't a jab. It was a fucking straight 2 to her face. That's what did it. And that's what any female boxer, any good female boxer would do. Makes me violent. So Angela Carini gets hit with the 2. She's like, ouch, that hurted. And she goes back to her corner. All of these pundits and people commentating on it, they're saying all sorts of shit like how heartbreaking it is and how difficult it was to watch.
For me, my reaction when I saw that clip, I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. It's really ugly, and it's quite upsetting to see this boxer on the canvas crying about being absolutely pummeled.
And I was wincing as I was watching the footage.
I know. Look,
to watch a woman get punched in the face is almost unbearable.
This shit was not difficult to watch. This was fine. It was not heartbreaking. It was literally boxing. Watching someone get knocked out cold, anyone getting knocked out cold, that's a difficult watch. Some woman getting booped on the snoot and then crying about it is not a difficult watch. You're a pussy. After Imane was declared the winner, normally people shake hands, but Angela Carini basically just denied the handshake. I'm genuinely uncertain of how many fabricated quotes there are of Angela Carini out there, because one of the first stories that I saw was from Fox News.
One more quote from the defeated Italian. Boxing is a sport that teaches you to have respect for the opponent. It cannot and must not become an abuse.
You can't be abusive like any sport. It has to be a vehicle for, I can remember, I can't understand the translation here, but
I don't know how these fuckers live with themselves. Yeah, I think the important part here is to say that it was an abuse, and I'll take out this part about it being a weapon in life, but only for defense.
You wanna know what I do?
No.
I'm not a woman, so this circumstance could never happen. But if I was Carini, and they said, go into the boxing ring, the fight's gonna happen, I would put my hands behind my back, and I would stand perfectly still, and I would not move. I would not guard. I would not put my hands up. Or, I think they might require you to before the fight starts. I'd immediately put them down, and I'd put them to the side. Put my hands behind my back. I wouldn't fight. I'd say, no, you can win. Yeah, but you're going to have to beat me defenseless. I don't play these games.
I used to think like Tim Pool. When I was a kid, I would consume a lot of TV shows and movies, and I do a lot of daydreaming and fantasizing about like what I would do in a specific scenario. Well, I do this, I do that, and then everyone would cheer for me. You build up like a fictional scenario. Bro really thinks that he would be the leader of like a civil rights movement, and that Imane Khelif would like have no thought in her brain. She'd just be an out of control animal, just continuing to punch someone who's defenseless in the boxing ring.
And I would stand perfectly still and I would not move.
And the ref would just like look on in horror, and he wouldn't like stop you or break anything up. He'd just be like, oh no, like this is a child's thought. Why are you sharing that? Despite what Karini said about not wanting to make a political statement, just dropping to her knees and crying was enough to rile up the anti-trans community so that they could use this as another example.
2 transgender women boxers have now been given permission to compete in the Olympics.
At least 2 transgender boxers.
I don't know if y'all have been watching the Olympics, but I called this a while ago. This trans lie, we have to stop. A woman who got her ass kicked by some dude in 46 seconds.
It's unfortunate that Imane and Lin Yuting are specifically being accused of being trans because it automatically plays into the dichotomy that if a trans person was competing, it would be a problem. And that's not necessarily the case. Sports federations all across the world are figuring out what it means to have a trans athlete competing as a man or a woman. Each federation is deciding different things. Now, I bring up these federations because the IBA is the Federation for Boxing. They are specifically the ones who have been working with the International Olympic Committee to put on boxing at the Olympics. Now, ever since, I want to say, the 2016 Olympics, there was some match fixing or accusations of match fixing, and the IOC and IBA have been butting heads. So Imane and Lin Yuting both competed in the IBA tournament in New Delhi in 2023, and they did well, but after the tournament, their sex test results came back. The sex tests for Imane Khelif and Lin Yuting both came back as XY. The argument that I'm making is that in the year of 2023, when these athletes competed and they were, targeted, sex tested, and stripped of their titles, there was no mention of gender eligibility in the handbook. In the letter that Imane receives from the IBA, it cites section 4.2.1 from the technical handbook. That section basically reads like, we reserve the right to make the final decision on a fighter's eligibility. Case closed, basically. And I just think that is so shitty. If you're going to, go through the effort of making a new handbook every year and changing the rules every year, clearly the rules mean something, or they should mean something. Because what's in the handbook for 2024 is basically what they did discreetly in 2023. And none of the fighters had that information. They didn't know what the gender eligibility requirements were. As far as they knew, it was be a woman. You can at least argue that if you waited for the following year where you established the definitions and the criteria, that information would be publicly available to everyone, including the competitors, and they can make the decision for themselves. Do I want to risk this? A lot of these losers online have been thinking the smoking gun here is these athletes not appealing the decision that the IBA made.
But they had a chance to appeal, but they didn't. That's the bottom line, which means they're male.
Why did they not appeal that unfair ruling?
If you are about to fight in the gold medal round and they tell you you can't because you're not actually a woman and you are one, why the hell would you not appeal? It makes no sense. These two are male.
I hate these people. The Court for Sports Arbitration is the high court for sports. Whatever decision they make is the final decision. To put your gender identity, your whole being, in the hands of a sports court is already a crazy thing to do. They aren't here to determine what is right, what is correct, They're here to determine what's fair, what they think is fair for the sport. They don't care that you've been competing for the past 8 years, the money you've spent, the time you've spent. Everything that you've done for the past 8 years is irrelevant to them, because they can just look at your chromosomes and be like, you're a fucking man. Who are you appeasing, and how are you rewarded at the end of the day for participating in that system? Piers Morgan says if she's a biological woman, he's a biological aardvark.
Look at this. This is a man. This is a man. We don't care if they look like women. They have to actually be women. Look at this. We know this is a man. Eyes still matter.
So if these are the people you have to prove your womanhood to, is it really worth it? They clearly have already made up their mind. I don't think it's worth it. No, sorry, you're losers. The opinions of losers are not going to be considered. One of the first stories I read is a story of Ewa Klabukowska. Now, Ewa Klabukowska is a Polish track and field athlete. I think she's still alive today. But back in the 60s, when she was competing at the Olympics, she had to take a sex chromatin test. And that basically is a cheek swab, and she failed the test. Upon failing the sex test, she was stripped of all of her titles, essentially erased from the record books, and her results were publicized to the world. What's fascinating about Eva's story is after being banned from competing in women's sports, a year later, she gave birth to a son. Now, you might think that this gives her a lot of credit in the womanhood department. But if you listen to someone like Riley Gaines,
if you have a Y chromosome, you are a male.
Based on their definition of what a man is.
Because they tested XY positive, they're male.
A man got pregnant. What kind of excuse and cope would these people come up with?
If the DNA test comes back and says, sorry, you're a bloke, you can't compete anymore.
Okay, now we're in the 80s. We have Maria Jose Martinez Pateno. In 1985, she had forgotten her certificate of femaleness, so she needed to take another sex test. Unfortunately, she had failed this test. The Olympics sort of learned their lesson with Eva. They basically said, like, to all the athletes who failed the sex test, they said, fake an injury so you aren't humiliated. 2 months after she was advised to fake an injury, she got a letter that classified her as a 46XY male. But because Maria is different, she's built different, she has AIS, and that stands for androgen insensitivity syndrome. So any benefit that she would have gotten from testosterone would have been negated completely. She got dumped by her boyfriend. She was super worried that she had the same condition that had killed her brother years before. Through trying to pursue the idea of fairness, they have been so unfair to these women throughout time, and they haven't prevented any men from competing in sports. And it's not as if that would be the worst thing that happened. Like, if you're forcing a surgery on one of your athletes for them to be able to compete, that basically is like, we're the baddies. We're the ones doing the bad things. One of the arguments that I've seen floating around is, why should we accommodate such a low percentage of the population?
I very much think this person is a rarity, but I don't think you make exceptions for one rarity and put other XX women's health and safety at jeopardy.
We're not talking about one rarity when we talk about intersex people. We're talking about a portion of the population. These aren't people who are eventually going to go away. They're going to keep competing in sports, and they're going to keep showing up to the Olympics.
If you're being intersex, we're talking about 0.1% of the population. Okay, it's a very, very small portion of the population.
Otherwise known as 0.1%. It's not an accurate number. The number is actually 0.018%, but I'm here to challenge what you might think is a tiny portion of the population. Because people with the name Caitlyn actually make up 0.00136%. There are 13 times more people who are intersex than people named Caitlyn in the US.
0.000 point whatever of the population.
0.001% of people have Swyer syndrome, which means you have XY chromosomes, but you have all the normal female reproductive organs. Now let's compare that to 0.0000124% of people named Megan with a Y. I could now kind of understand why Megan with a Y is pissed, is because she wanted to be Megan with an X. Megxin.
0.01% and 2% of the entire global population.
People with androgen insensitivity syndrome make up 0.0035% of the population. To compare that to people named Piers, that would be 0.00007%. So you are 500 times more likely to be born with androgen insensitivity syndrome than to be named Piers. The reason I'm bringing up these percentages is because I think a lot of us have the tendency to like downplay and dehumanize people when we think that they're essentially an insignificant portion of the population. They feel insignificant because you don't know anyone who's intersex. I mean, you've heard these people. They're saying XX chromosome woman, XY man. And then you show them one of these intersex people and their brain fucking explodes. They're like, what the hell? Like, I guess it's like a physical, like a biologically trans person. Like they can't compute.
The whole thing is confusing to me. It's not trans. It's not the transgender athlete declaring themselves female. This is at birth, I guess.
It's not a choice. It's, I guess, you're born this way.
Mutation in the genes, whatever.
Well, now that I can't say that it's a mental illness, I don't know what to do. This is like analog trans? This is acoustic trans? Boxing is inherently a dangerous sport. You're punching another person in the face and they're punching you. So the boxers are well aware of how unsafe it is. The doctors, the refs, the coaches, the judges, everyone fucking knows that it is just an unsafe sport in general. What they don't need is random commentators online saying how unsafe it is to have someone like Imane Khelif competing.
Men competing with women and destroying women's sports. What's it gonna take? It might take somebody dying.
She had never been punched like this before. Someone's gonna die.
This is about preventing a man from beating a woman to death.
Radical trans activists and those who support them are not going to be happy until a woman is dead. A woman is going to have to die for people to see reason and logic here.
I don't think that would stop it.
These people are talking a lot about death. I don't think any of them got the memo. There's a lot of deaths in boxing. I think they're being very dramatic because they see an opportunity to push their agenda and they're like, sweet, I've been complaining about men and women's sports.
Someone with a penis coming at you in the locker room. How about my daughter not going into a locker room and seeing a man's penis? He's showing off a penis in a locker room with his penis out.
Now's the example where I could say, okay, like, it's violent and it could lead to death. Maybe people will listen to me now. If you sign up for boxing, compete in boxing, you're consensually agreeing to beat the shit out of another person as they attempt to do it to you. So the fear that these people are trying to propagate on the general public is not a new fear. But guess what? All of those female boxers at the Olympics, they've been doing it for years. Angela Carini, just like every other female fighter, consented to fighting her opponent.
And shame on the IOC for not protecting the safety of women's sports.
Right. Other women had an unfair advantage, but unsafe advantage.
It is up for a society to prevent the abuse of women, but we don't do that anymore.
Women getting injured in sport, women getting beaten in the boxing ring is not uniquely dangerous. A lot of these people just don't like it. It is like very obvious in the way that they talk that they feel personally uncomfortable with it.
Women shouldn't box. It's wrong. I can't watch it.
To watch a woman get punched in the face is almost unbearable.
To see a woman violently punched in the head by a man, I cannot understate how despicable that is.
And that tells you all you need to know, because they don't see men and women as equal. That's just a fact. And that's fine, that is like their ideology, but they can't insert their opinion about women's boxing, because if it was up to them, women wouldn't be boxing, period.
Actually, some things are better left to the fellas, like catching blows to the head, and some things are better left to the women, like giving birth, for instance.
Megyn Kelly wants us to use our eyes.
Eyes still matter.
For everything except her ability to box. Okay, so what the hell? So you want me to just very blatantly discriminate against someone and then close my eyes for the boxing? Because Imane's got fights. She's got 9 losses and only 7 knockouts. You look at Gervonta Davis's fight record and you're like, oh shit, what a knockout rate. I don't think I want an average professional boxer to go in the ring with this guy. You can make that argument, but no one's making the argument for him because they're like, they're all grown men. They could choose for themselves what they want to do with their lives. But when it comes to the grown women, they're like, nah, it's about time us men step in because this is now a men's issue. If you guys want to know how to feel about Imane Khelif, look no further than the way these random men reacted as compared to women boxers who actually have fought Imane Khelif.
It was disturbing to watch.
To me, they've got blood on their hands because there was blood coming from her nose and it was a disgrace.
Would you be comfortable fighting against it?
I've already fought against Imane, a hard fighter, and my last fight was against Imane in the Netherlands in the final, so yeah. You just keep punching in the sport of boxing, it doesn't really matter, so yeah.
Logan Paul, WWE superstar, boxer, influencer, he yesterday said, "This is the purest form of evil unfolding before our eyes. A man allowed to beat up a woman on the global stage, crushing her life's dream."
Very happy for Imane, weathered the storm and got what she deserved. This is sickening. This is a travesty. I'm not afraid. We're evenly matched.
Sorry, it's not more dangerous. The fights have concluded, and Imane kicked their asses, but it wasn't more dangerous. Oopsie. It's like your worst nightmare came true. After Logan Paul, Piers Morgan, and J.K. Rowling give their highly educated take on Imane Khelif, they get to go back to what they've been doing. Logan Paul gets to reskin Lunchables and sell them for millions of dollars. Piers Morgan gets to move on to the next news story. J.K. Rowling gets to write her next book about wizards who definitely don't experience gender dysphoria. Oh, by the way, Imane Khelif is suing Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling, which is just fucking awesome. I think that's about as much as I can contribute to this conversation, but if you enjoyed this content, I have at least 20 minutes of edited content that I'm going to upload on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. I realize that every video I make on this channel, I have at least 20 minutes of edited content that I just send off into the ether every time. I figured this is a good way to be a little bit more sustainable with my content. Alright, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. Remember to tune in next time when I take the Turing test.
Okay, so look, give me those thank yous to everybody in Algeria.
Thank you, everybody in Algeria, in USA, in Miami, Pedro.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a champion at 66.
Left uppercut followed by a left jab straight away on the face of our opponent.